Okay, Steve and Claire, how are you both?
Hi, very well, thanks.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so we're at the Farm Business Innovation Show, and I thought it would be, since you were here and helping at the Wigwam stand, I thought it would be just worth having a quick chat about your journey with Wigwam and how it all started. So my first question for you both is, right back at the very beginning, I'm assuming you had a sort of plot of land and you were thinking about different ways that you might be able to make money from it. So what were you first thinking in those sort of steps, or what sort of other options did you look at that time?
Okay, we bought a derelict house many years ago. It had about 7 acres of paddock land. A lot of it was just trodden by the horses.
Yeah.
No trees, no nothing. And my passion is for the great outdoors and trees and wildlife and stuff like that, the flora and the fauna. So we looked at seeing what else we could do on the land, and we started searching around to see what our options were, and we came across this, the glamping, and we just started then searching the market for a suitable supply of camping cabins, and sort of went from there, really, didn't we?
Well, we looked at caravan and camping first, didn't we? But
Yeah.
when we looked into it more, it just wasn't feasible to do it, was it? So then we looked at another option, which was the back of that was the glamping.
That's interesting. What was the thing that made you think the camping and caravan wasn't feasible?
The money that it would cost us to turn the land, obviously we'd still have to put hard standing areas in, put electrics in, put water in, but the return on night accommodation just
Didn't add up.
there.
So you had in your mind glamping roughly, and you were thinking like a pod specifically, or were you looking at different options as well with what product you were actually going to have on your site?
When we started looking, there wasn't a great deal around.
And when would this have been? Sorry, just what sort of year was this?
Well, we bought the house probably about 11 years ago, and we started with an idea a couple of years later. And what we had to do then is when we saw that we wanted some type of cabin on the land, we had to then think about what we're going to do to the land to make it more attractive to site them on. So we looked for grants for tree planting, forestry planting, and the National Forest where we're part of. They had a small grant that we were accepted on. So basically we planted 600-700 trees with a view of actually siting the trees so we can slot little cabins in. So which was really successful.
But we also did about 2-3 years research of coming to the glamping shows and looking at the cabins, and year on year you'd see that some cabins would be there one year but not there the next year. Wigwam cabins were there constant, so then we started having the rapport with Charles and Wigwams, didn't we?
Yeah, well, Charles came. I touched base with Charles years ago, and he popped into Leeds Bradford Airport where I was working at the time, and sat down with me and gave me give me some ballpark figures of what it was likely to turn over, sort of thing. So I was interested. I still looked at other places, but for some reason I kept coming back to Wigwam, back and back again. So I was going and looking somewhere else, and then I thought, well, it's in front of my face here. I need to be looking at this more seriously.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
And for me, it was very much going with Wigwams was the fact that Charles is approachable, although he's the owner of the business, he's actually approachable. So I have no problem. If I'd got any issues, then I'd quite happily give Charles a call.
So in terms of why or what was attractive about Wigwam, obviously you mentioned Charles, the owner, was one of the things, and also just the consistency. There's a lot of different products at these shows and things come and go. So that the sort of longevity of Wigwam as well as Charles was something that attractive. Was there anything else that made you want to go with Wigwam?
It was the franchise as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so
the
franchise for us was having the support because we didn't have the time or the knowledge to set up a booking system or do marketing. So for us, it was the whole package of what was on offer.
When you start strapping the other bits on, like a website, then you're looking at a secure booking portal, GDPR compliant, and things like that. It all costs money. But then when you start looking at the franchise model and what you have to pay back to the franchise to be part of that, it made financial sense to us. Absolutely financial sense.
So in terms of financing your project, did the franchise help with that? How did you finance your cabins to start with?
Well, okay, so we looked at different options, and I think the important thing for us was to make sure that we were comfortable with what we were spending, because setting up any glamping site is not going to be cheap. So we had to make sure that we got something we can afford. So I looked at asset financing. I looked at all other areas. They were fairly expensive, and it didn't quite fit what we were looking for. So we decided to try and go for just a Main Street bank, and Barclays Bank is what we used. And I think the most difficult thing about financing through a bank is to make them believe that what you want to do is worthwhile for them. It's something it's worth for them to look at. Mm-hmm. We're a small business, so what I did was I tried to put them in a position where they couldn't say no. So I constructed a really good business plan, and spent a lot of time on it. And then the next challenge was actually getting into the bank to go and see someone worthwhile. So we got a meeting, we turned up, and they weren't there. The meeting wasn't set up, so we wasted our time. So on the way back, I said I want the guy to call me. He called me. He asked to see if we had a business plan. I said yes. He sent the business plan, and then once he saw the business plan, he phoned me the next day and said, "Hey Steve," he goes, "I've just seen your business plan." He goes, "I've not seen one like this for years. It's really good. I'd like to deal with it myself." So now we got in with the business bank manager, not just one of his one of his staff.
And were you already talking to Wigwam at the point that you wrote the business plan? So did Wigwam help in constructing that business plan? Did it help that you were attached to a national brand and network of sites?
Totally. Yeah, for several reasons. A franchise in a bank size is a safer option than someone just having a go at it. Mm-hmm. And also the support we got at the beginning was like a 3 or 5 year projection. So I could put that in as part of the business plan. There's a lot of data, historic data, so I could use all that data and put it into my business plan. And on top of that, with my experience with things like that, I put my pain points, as I always like to see, what ifs and stuff, and I put all those in there, and it seemed to do the job.
Moving on quickly, this show's about to start. What was your planning process like? This is something a lot of our people thinking about, not just joining Wigwam, but just getting into, many businesses, but glamping particularly. This is a real challenge for many people. What was your planning process like?
Ours was a big challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a nightmare. Basically, because we're in a sensitive area, we're adjacent to SSI. We've got a number of wealthy people by us, and people don't like change. People think it's going to be an Alton Towers or something like that. Butlins is the comments that were mentioned to us. And they had influence in within the local villages and the councillors and people like that. So they all got together and they basically objected as a huge group of people. And we heard loads of objections in. But then I quickly learned that humans are lazy in nature, and they hadn't taken the time to actually sit down and read the local planning policies. And their 10-year, 20-year projections of what they want to do in the next 10 or 20 years. It's all there written down in documents, and also the national planning policy. So I actually sat down and read 650 odd pages of local planning policy, understood it, and then took them on. And as you know, when you do planning, the planning officer can only reject things on fact, not on people's opinions. So based on this, what happened, she recommended it to go through, and the village and the councillors and everybody else didn't want it. So I took them on from fact against their opinion, and we went to plans committee, and we won the day, and we got permission.
Wow, so it's just a case of being as thorough as you could and building the strongest possible case.
The points of what's required. If you go to plans committee meeting, you've got to stick to what they're looking for and not make it personal about the reason you want it here is because you just got to stick to that policy.
And that was something I know you were a big part in your own planning process, but was there any help with Wigwam at that stage? Was there anything useful from us there?
There was a little bit of advice here and there. from a company that was I think Wigwam were dealing with at the time. So I spoke just to get some sort of basic sort of general little bit of knowledge on certain areas. But generally, I did the majority of it myself. I did pay for a specialist to help me write my 5 minutes of speech that I was taking to plans committee. It was really helpful. Had I not done that, I don't think it would have been successful, because it was basically I had the 50 minutes against me and 5 minutes myself, and that was 5 minutes from the locals, 5 minutes from the ward council, and 5 minutes from the from the parish councillor.
How have you found running your site? What was it like? Was there anything surprising about running the site? Was there anything you were scared of at the beginning that maybe hasn't been as bad as you thought? Is there anything that you didn't even think about that has been a challenge?
I think it's all quite daunting at first, isn't it? When you've not done that because you're doing it for yourself, so you don't want to let yourself down as well as your customers down. So you've always got that nervousness about you when you first open, and now we're kind of 4 years down the line. It's almost, we're all human at the end of the day. Things happen, but it's how you deal with them. And this year's been really nice year, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah.
It's just building that confidence, and it becomes second nature to what you do, and it's how you handle people and how you set your site up and how you welcome them. And we always meet people and say goodbye to people, which is that personal touch, which is what they like.
So, good decision then? You're glad you set it up?
It's hard work, but business is always going to be hard work. I suppose one of the things that I suppose going back to your last question that surprises you a little bit is actually sometimes it's not so much the cabins. The cabins are brilliant. The infrastructure behind it all, the franchise and all the support is brilliant. But then you have things like weather, so you've got groundwork to do, and you might have to make changes to drainage in the ground. So there's always pretty big jobs that you might have to consider at times, just to make sure once you set something up, it needs time to settle in. So then you think, oh, okay, we can do this a bit better. So it's basically spending the years of learning about the site and how it sits, what our customers want, and then making those changes gradually through the year. And we quite like the idea that if you make a change every year and you get a returning customer, they're like, oh, look, you've done something else, and it will make them want to come back again and again.
Final question then, what's the benefit, now you're up and running, what's the benefit, or how do you see the benefit now of being part of the Wigwam brand and network?
Support and having people, if you're not sure on something, you can pick the phone up and ask somebody, and you just all work as a team. There's always somebody on the end of the phone to talk to.
Yeah, it's the main thing.
Yeah.
It's a franchise, well-supported franchise, passionate team at the head office, and there's always someone that you can ask. And all the questions that we've ever asked have always been answered. All the support we needed have always been there. So it's been great.
Stephen, Claire, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.